Sure.
All right,
Okay.
all right. Welcome. I'm Johnny here. We're here to remember Charlie. This is just such a wild moment. A lot of people comparing his death to MLK, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I really appreciated seeing Charlie, speak at these campuses, speaking uncomfortable truths to kind of going in the lion's den, so to speak. And yeah, just for freedom of speech, for debate, for coming together, for seeking truth. That was his mo. How he went about it, and he was so courageous in that. And there's a lot of important things that he was really speaking to. This whole transgender agenda being pushed on our children. It's just unbelievable. 12 years ago, you wouldn't have believed we could be where we are today, and that's one reason that people are really upset with him. But he debated these issues with the utmost respect, honor to people. He really loved people, and yeah, it was just full on namaste spirit. So Tam and everybody, thank you for joining me. I wanted to go to you first. Can you share something about Charlie with us?
Yeah, I mean, I never got to see him, speak live, but I've watched him on TV several times, and I was fascinated with him, just like the way he carried himself. And as young as he is, I'm in my 40s, so he's like 31. That's my nephew's ages, and to see someone with so much passion, and he was definitely a force of nature, and he was just brilliant, like his methods, and you're just like, wow, like you don't see that often, so it's kind of like when you see someone like Bobby, and you're just like, okay, gosh, we love this man. He stands up for what he believes, and no one's going to stop him. And I thought that about Charlie. Of course, they're both, different views, the things that they believed in. But I love the open dialogue. The first time I saw one of his clips where he was sitting at a college campus, very relaxed atmosphere, hat backward. It's like blazing hot. These kids are lined up and they are debating him. I think, and he even said, "Hey, if you have a difference, if you're, difference in opinion, come to the front of the line." And one of the clips I saw was they were talking about God, if God was real, because you had a guy that had on a satanic shirt, and Charlie explains, yeah, he's real because he saved my life, and I'm like, and I'm here to tell you that God is very real. And so, and that's just a small clip, but I mean, he argued with these people when it came from abortion, reparations, transgenderism, like all the hard topics that, if you get into it and you're with people, especially you're going into a lion's den where these people don't agree with you. Majority of us don't have the courage to do that, and he did. And I love that about him. And I love the quote that he made about when discourse stops, then that's when the violence starts. And it's absolutely true. Like when we stop talking to one another and we shut each other down, we're not willing to listen to one another, then that's when we're not even connecting as humans, and that's where all this violence arise. So it just when I found out he got shot, I got a text message, and then I looked on the news. I literally stopped in my day and I was working, and I prayed right after that. And I'm just, then I get another text, and my nephew's like, it's really bad. Like, I don't think he's going to make it. And I'm thinking, like, oh man, okay, he's shot. Maybe he's okay. Then I unfortunately saw the video, and it really, it's traumatizing. I wish I didn't see that. And to hear that his wife and his two kids were there, I can't even imagine. You know, 3 and 1 years old. I saw a picture of my girls sitting on bleachers. We were earlier today, and it was when one of the tours, my husband came home from a deployment. We're all waiting for the guys to come back. And I kind of just thought, like, gosh, what if those are my girls sitting there, and they see something happen to the dad. And that's exactly what happened with this family. And it's an absolute tragic. And to see people make these disgusting comments and laugh emojis and celebrating. It's so disturbing. Um, I've seen classmates of mine and people that I knew in high school, and just putting things like, even, oh yeah, thoughts and prayers, whatever. And I know what they mean by that. That's their whole, like, okay, when we have a school shooting, all you conservatives or all you people, Republicans, want to say thoughts and prayers, but you're not really doing anything or taking action. You don't care. So that was their response. And it just really, I don't know, it really made me angry. I've been going back and forth between anger and sadness the last 2 days. And yeah, I just can't believe this is where our country is at.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's unreal. It feels surreal. It feels like we haven't seen a kind of an act of violence like this to somebody so prominent in a long time, maybe. And
Yeah.
yeah. Alex, you had some interaction with Charlie. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So what can you share a little about that?
Sure, sure. Well, I wanted to start by saying I think the comparison to the MLK assassination is a good one. People forget that in the 1960s, MLK represented the moderate wing of the civil rights movement, with Malcolm X and the black separatists and the militant blacks on the more extreme wing. And MLK was the person who was advocating for compromise, for speech, for color blindness, as compared to the extremists who saw reconciliation and integration as impossible. And MLK was killed for it. And I think the same thing just happened to Charlie. Charlie was a moderate. He was not an extremist. He was not a fascist. He had the views of a typical center right conservative that you would see at your Thanksgiving dinner table. And I think the most horrific thing about the response to his death has been the realization that if they're willing to celebrate his death for his views, they'd be willing to celebrate my death for my views, or your death for your views, or your death for your views,
Yeah.
or anyone we know, because 100 million, 150 million Americans believe the same things Charlie believed. He wasn't some outlier fringe radical. He was entirely within the mainstream of American right-wing discourse. So I never had the opportunity to work directly with Charlie. I moved in similar circles about a decade ago for about a year, 2017 to 2018. I was politically active as the manager of a company called Milo Inc., which was doing campus tours for Milo Yiannopoulos, who was in 2018 a very controversial conservative provocateur. His talks on UC Berkeley campus ended up leading to a protest of about 1,500 Antifa uh, protesters who set fires, hurled rocks, set off fireworks, and ultimately went on a rampage through downtown Berkeley. 3 people were assaulted and injured. About $100,000 worth of damage was done. And thereafter, Milo began to have to become very, very serious about security. He traveled with bodyguards. He used a security firm that was staffed with former special forces operators. He endured a lot of death threats, and had to pay something like $200,000 a year in insurance to be able to speak at the events, and ultimately ended up not being able to speak at the events, was entirely canceled and deplatformed. And looking back on it at the time, often as the business manager, I wasn't out speaking. I was just basically the guy who ran the books and put together the contracts and things like that. And 20% of our entire company budget was security and insurance. You think about that, $1 in $5 of that we spent just on those two things. And I can't imagine what it's going to be turning point now that people are dying. Literally, they're just dying for speech. How do you go on campus and get insured now? I have no idea. What sort of security provisions do you need? I have no idea. So it's everybody talks about the chilling effect of speech. That's going to be pretty chilling.
Yeah, and that's so important. That's what heals the divide. That's what brings us back together. That's how we iron out our differences. And that's this cancel culture. It's just so crazy. I saw like a little Facebook story of one of my friends, and she was saying, "Oh, it's time for me to purge some of my friends from some of the things I'm seeing." And it's just like, what are you talking about? I mean, I'm sure there's something somebody could say that would want to make me like unfriend them because of it, but like nothing comes to mind. And it's like and especially on issues like this, like what if you believe you're right? Well, you know, maybe you don't want to like try to always be telling them, hey, you're wrong about this. I don't want to, but there's times in friendships where there's a word in due season where it's the right word, right time to give a word. And if you really believe you're right and they're wrong, you're a friend of theirs. Like, so you know what? Maybe there's going to be an opportunity for you to bring them around to the right side, show them the light a little bit, and this divisiveness. I think it's really telegraphed by the media, and yeah, it's hard to see how to overcome it. But you're right. It is chilling for that idea of free speech. But I tell you, I think it makes a lot of us want to be all the bolder. And yeah, these issues they are so important. I look, I'm not upset at any guy who wants to go out and wear a dress and do whatever he wants. But until 12 years ago, this was, or until a little beyond that, this was a mental illness, and it is people with other mental disorders that are doing this. And to have children who just go through phase after phase and season after season, to tell them that they can choose their gender and to present this to them. And when we see it, how it can be a social contagion, absolute madness. It's so important to talk about. So.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to learn what ultimately triggered the killer. Like, what is it about what Charlie said that made him believe that he was a fascist who deserved to die? I don't know if we'll ever know, but it would certainly be interesting to find out. And I suspect it's going to be it's going to be a belief that 100 million Americans believe in. It's kind of hard to process, like this sudden realization that your run-of-the-mill political beliefs of your typical friend, family, conservative politician, local church-going American is now seen as radical enough to justify them being murdered. It's pretty wild to think about that.
It is wild.
Jump in, Sam.
I wanted to get on social media today and say, like, you see how we see third world countries in the Middle East, how when they kill one of their enemies or someone they were really wanting to kill, they parade the body around town and they celebrate, they dance. I wanted to make that comparison that we're there already. Like, we're not parading the body, but you seeing all these people celebrate and doing these disgusting things. That mindset is there, and that's the point where we're really headed to darkness, because we're no longer celebrating life. We're celebrating death, and it seems almost now like a life is not considered important. And it can be gone just because you don't like what someone say, or if it's an inconvenience. And that's how it's looked at right now. And a life should be precious, but it's not seen that way anymore, which a life is created, by God. But we are so far away from that. And that, all those messages that Charlie spoke and he related back to, he always talked about the Lord. And I think that really, it resonated with many of us, but it also caused a lot of hatred because of where we're at in the country, that we are at a place where, majority of people are not, and there's different religions, but I don't know what they believe, but we're not, we're a fallen country.
Tolerance doesn't come easy to people, right? It's most countries in the world, most civilizations haven't prized tolerance. And in the West, or Europe, and through the European inheritance, the United States, we inherited the belief in tolerance because of the result of the Protestant Reformation. After the Protestant Reformation, Catholics and Protestants both became convinced of the moral certainty of their cause, and they killed each other for decades in the 30 Years' War, decade after decade after decade. And most people don't know this, but something like 20% of the population of Germany died during the 30 Years' War in the 1600s. And it was only at the end of the 30 Years' War, when they've murdered each other for so long that they finally said, maybe we should agree to tolerate each other. Let's just accept that we're going to have some differences of opinion about God and stop killing each other all the time. And so we the West earned the principle of tolerance by fighting until we were exhausted. And then we said, okay, this is stupid. Let's make peace and live. And then what followed is, 3 centuries of the greatest civilization that had happened till that time. And we've forgotten that, right? Like the alternative to Charlie Kirk is violence, ultimately.
Yeah.
The alternative to what Charlie Kirk did is violence. You can either talk to people, you can go and have conversations, say, I agree, I disagree, we're going to vote about it, or you can kill each other. And we're at this terrifying point where people are saying, you know what? Let's kill each other.
It's terrifying.
It's so crazy. It reminds me of the tribalism, and how, when we're stoking these fires of tribalism, it's just, it's not a good idea. Guys, we do have Erica, Charlie's late wife, coming to make her first comments, and she's live now. I want to tune into that, and then we can kind of share some comments on what's going on there. But real quick, before we do that, Danya, do you want to come in and share a little bit about Charlie for a sec? You're muted there.
I just wanted to add to the discussion that it reminds me, I'm reminded of what Trump said after he was the assassination attempt in Butler, something along the lines of that they're really coming for you, his supporters, that he was just in the way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true of Charlie. And I feel like the message is communicated to Christendom, to young people, to college students, to that whole generation who might consider conservative ideas, Christian ideas, and voice them, that was a message for all of Christendom, for a generation of young people, for college students, and
Hey, we're losing you there, Danya. Let's come back to you here. I want to bring in Erica now here and let her go. Let's see. Oh, that's the wrong one here. Let's see. I can do this better. Now this will do it.
Good evening. My name is Erica Kirk. Charlie Kirk is my husband. I first want to thank the local, state, and federal law enforcement who worked tirelessly to capture my husband's assassin so that he can be brought to justice. I want to thank the first responders who struggled heroically to save Charles's life, and the police who acted bravely to make sure that there were no other victims on that terrible afternoon. I want to thank the officers who have protected our Turning Point USA family these past 2 days. And I want to thank the Turning Point USA board, the COO, Justin Strife, and my husband's chief of staff, the amazing Mikey McCoy, for all their work in these terrible days to be the stability for our family and for the wider Turning Point USA family as well. My heart is with every one of my husband's employees who lost a friend and a mentor. I want to thank the staffers of his amazing Charlie Kirk show, who helped him broadcast from this studio, this chair. Every day he loved what he did. I want to thank the millions of people who have shown their love for Charlie here in Phoenix, across America, and worldwide. I want to thank my husband's dear friend, Vice President Vance, and his phenomenal wife, Usha, for their love and support. You guys honored my husband so well bringing him home. You both are tremendous. I want to thank President Trump and his incredible family for the same. Mr. President, my husband loved you. And he knew that you loved him too. He did. Your friendship was amazing. You supported him so well, as did he for you. 2 days ago, my husband, Charlie, went to see the face of his Savior and his God. Charlie always said that when he was gone, he wanted to be remembered for his courage and for his faith. And one of the final conversations that he had on this earth, my husband witnessed for his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now and for all eternity, he will stand at his Savior's side, wearing the glorious crown of a martyr. Charlie loved life. He loved his life. He loved America. He loved nature, which helped him always bring him closer to God. He loved the Chicago Cubs. And my goodness, did he love the Oregon Ducks. Want me to say go Ducks, so I have to since they play on Saturday. So go Ducks. But most of all, Charlie loved his children. And he loved me with all of his heart. And I knew that. Every day I knew that. He made sure I knew that every day. Every day he would ask me, how can I serve you better? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? Every day. Every day. Such a good man. He still is a good man. He was the perfect father. He was the perfect husband. Charlie always believed that God's design for marriage and the family was absolutely amazing, and it is. It is, and it was the greatest joy of his life. And over, he would tell all these young people to come and find their future spouse, become wives and husbands and parents. And the reason why is because he wanted you all to experience what he had and still has. He wanted everyone to bring heaven into this earth through love and joy that comes from raising a family. It's beautiful. Charlie always said that if he ever ran for office, I know a lot of you asked if he ever was going to, but privately he told me if he ever did run for office that his top priority would be to revive the American family. That was his priority. One of Charlie's favorite Bible verses was Ephesians 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. My husband laid down his life for me, for our nation, for our children. He showed the ultimate and true covenantal love. I will never, ever have the words to describe the loss that I feel in my heart. I honestly have no idea what any of this means. I know that God does, but I don't. But Charlie, baby, I know you do too. I know you do. So does our Lord. And our world is filled with evil. But our God, you guys, our God is so good. He's so incredibly good. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. Already I have seen the worldwide outpouring of love for my husband. I've heard the testimonies from people my husband inspired to get married, to start families, to seek out a relationship with God. It's the most important one of all. The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. But they should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country and this world. You have no idea. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. To everyone listening tonight across America, the movement my husband built will not die. It won't. I refuse to let that happen. It will not die. All of us will refuse to let that happen. No one will ever forget my husband's name, and I will make sure of it. It will become stronger, bolder, louder, and greater than ever. My husband's mission will not end, not even for a moment. And one of Charlie's greatest talents was his ability, this phenomenal ability to choose great people to follow him. He could always find the ones who could handle any setback. And it's almost like he knew. He could see it in you. Even when you couldn't see it in yourself, he just knew. He knew you could handle it. You thought you only had 5% left, and he knew you had 15. He knew you were ready to go that extra mile even when you didn't. He always challenged people around him to work harder and to be better. He never gave up. And I love knowing that one of his mottos was never surrender. So I want to tell you that we'll never surrender. We never will. Ever. Ever. Our campus tour this fall will continue. There will be even more tours in the years to come. America Fest here in Phoenix this December will go on. It will be greater than ever. The radio and podcast show that he was so proud of will go on. And in a world filled with chaos, doubt, and uncertainty, my husband's voice will remain. And it will ring out louder and more clearly than ever. And his wisdom will endure. My favorite too, but my husband's favorite word in the English language was earn. He would call all of you to be people of action who earn the future America deserves. So to all of the young people who felt inspired by my husband's faith and hard work, all of you already know what Charlie would want you to do. You know. You know. If you're in high school or if you're in college, go find your local Turning Point USA chapter. Join it. Stay involved. He wants you to make a difference. And you can. You can. The movement's not going anywhere, and it will only grow stronger when you join it. If there isn't a chapter, you can't find one, then start one. There is no excuse. You can start one. And as my husband used to say in this room every single day, if you want to get involved, The best way you can do that is going to tpusa.com. That's what he would say every day from this chair. Every single day. I watched his show every day, and he would always say, if you want to get involved, go to tpusa.com. If you're a pastor, join our movement at TPUSA Faith. And if you're a parent, I highly recommend that you come to America Fest in December. Sign up right now for that because we would love to see you. I would love to see you. Charlie would. He'll be there. He'll be there in spirit. Bring your kids, bring your family. But most important of all, if you aren't a member of a church, I beg you to join one. A Bible-believing church. Our battle is not simply a political one. Above all, it is spiritual. It is spiritual. The spiritual warfare is palpable. Charlie loved his Savior with all of his heart, and he wanted every one of you to know him too. He wanted everyone to know that if they confess the Lord Jesus Christ who rose from the dead, then they will be saved. Hear me when I say this, nobody is ever too young to know the gospel. Nobody. Nobody is ever too young to get involved with saving this beautiful country, this country my husband loved and still loves. And nobody is ever too old either. There's no age limit. I know my husband is still here. He's watching over us. I don't remember the last time I slept. I couldn't sleep last night. And Charlie, baby. Charlie, I promise I will never let your legacy die, baby. I won't. I promise I'll make Turning Point USA the biggest thing that this nation has ever seen. I promise. Charlie, I love you, baby. Rest in the arms of our Lord as he blankets you with the words I know your heart always strived to hear. Well done, my good and faithful servant. When I got home last night, Gigi, our daughter, just ran into my arms. And I talked to her and she said, Mommy, I missed you. I said, I miss you too, baby. She goes, where's Daddy? What do you tell a 3-year-old? She's 3. I said, baby, Daddy loves you so much. Don't you worry. He's on a work trip with Jesus, so he can afford your blueberry budget. And my goodness, am I so humbled to witness, Charlie, you alongside Jesus right now, doing what you always want to do, baby. Making heaven crowded, right? That's what it's all about. Making heaven crowded. I can't wait to see you again one day. Thank you all again who love my husband, who supported him, who wrote him an email every single day during his radio show. He read all of them. All of them. God bless you all. And may God bless America.
Wow. Powerful words there by Erica Kirk. Man, never surrender. Gonna keep the torch going. You know, I think that's a feeling a lot of us have. You know, it reminds me of the scripture. You know, where one dies, you know, all the more come. And yeah, I think that's how so many of us feel. So yeah, it's wild times, and there's just I feel like there's a deception on a lot of the country that's, never been so powerful. And it's important to keep speaking truth to that, because that's what, is going to set things right and bring peace. So.
Yeah, that was a
Can you guys
hard to
hear
watch
that?
it.
All right. Sorry about that. I think I got that technical difficulty going. Go ahead, Alex. I'll bring you in on that.
As I said, that was hard to watch, the hurt that she was experiencing. But any man would count himself lucky to have his wife eulogize him like that after his death, for sure.
I want to bring in my my buddy Bill. I invited to come on and come share with us a little bit. Bill, did you catch Charlie's wife there sharing her remarks? Here, I got you muted here. Let me unmute you. There we go. Oh, you're muted on your end here.
Hey, there we go.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, I was going to say, of course I did. It was hard to get through listening to my wife cry through it. So that kind of tells you where the emotion was on that. I will say a couple of things I caught earlier I wanted to comment on. Charlie died at 33. Thomas Jefferson signed the Declaration of, or at 31. Thomas Jefferson signed the Declaration of Independence at 33. So you think about age and wisdom and things like that. And those numbers kind of hit me. It was just kind of powerful for me today to think about that and compare those two men. And I'll say, for what he represented, he was a warrior. He was the guy who went into the lion's den to me, and he offered an olive branch. And the fact that, he went to university, which wasn't, they're not known for being breeding grounds of conservatism. And he went there and he did something I think a lot of people have trouble with, and that's reaching the youth, especially on that side of the party. It's something that I think the other side's done a really good job through academia and pop culture. So he did something there that I think has eluded a lot of people. But he went there, and that in itself is an olive branch, because I'm coming to your house, I'm coming to your town square for a public debate, which to me is like, I think we need to put a little bit more emphasis back into debates and make them exciting again, because that's what it's all about. It's about a war of words and not a war of bullets. And unfortunately, I think some of us have lost sight of that. And I am going to put a lot of blame on that in the dehumanization of each other through parties. There's something happened. There's certain things that you attribute to words like Nazi and names like Hitler, and it's hard to throw those around and not, think there's going to be some type of repercussion from that. I will say another thing Charlie did was he made talking about Jesus on campus cool again. That's something I don't think you ever really saw. His rallies come around. He was open to it. It wasn't I just think it's something you probably didn't see every day out there. And I also think, man, he did something, Rush Limbaugh was such a huge voice for a lot of people. And I think Charlie could have, I think he was headed that way, maybe not in the same platform, whereas Rush was his icon of radio. I think given another decade or two, who knows where Charlie could have been in the social media sphere. I know who he was. My kid knew who he was. He went to church after Charlie got shot, and he is not, he's not a kid that goes to church all the time. So I think he had such a broad reach, man. It's such a loss for the community and the country as a whole. Because, like I said, he represented the best of us in the fact of, we shouldn't argue with violence. We shouldn't get enraged at each other. We should approach each other with the goal of understanding where that other person's coming from and doing our best to convince them. And if we don't, then we need to accept that and just move on, because there's so many good things that I think we don't connect us anymore like we used to. And I heard something, I won't talk much longer, but I heard something the other day, it said when a marriage goes through a rough time, the husband and wife don't pick at that scab every year. You look at that rough time, you accept it for what it was, you move past it. What kind of marriage would survive if we continually picked on those scabs? And I think as a country, that's what we've been doing for too many decades, is picking at these scabs and old wounds, a lot of which that I had thought had healed, especially in my youth. And we need to get back to letting that stuff heal, and just kind of accepting each other, man. Trying to get back to being Americans again and stop being at odds and being so divided over something that's a lot of us can't do a lot about, you know?
Well said. Yeah. I feel the same way. I feel like race relations were getting better and better, and you actually see that in polling until about 2012 or thereabouts. It started going the other way again, and yeah, I do blame it on this emphasis on finding a white cop, not handling a black you know, uh, criminal or maybe criminal the right way. But these sort of things happen every day, and to just find these and focus on them and obsess about them when you actually look by the numbers, this isn't. We actually have an under policing problem in the inner city Chicago and in places like Compton where there's a lot of gangland violence. If we want to, really address, some of the violence happening to Black people, it really is. A lot of these it's the drug war, honestly, that has really fostered this. And yeah, the agenda of CNN, I'll never forget. I don't know if it was a PSA explicitly, but a PSA is like when someone like CNN is going to say, hey, watch out for seed oils, or watch out for vaccinations that don't have real studies. What, don't eat too much sugar, or floss your teeth. They would play something along those lines, and I don't know if they were like checking this off the box, like, hey, we did our good work, but they would say, if you're a Black man in America, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to get shot by a policeman. And that's true, and that's terrible. But that goes back to this gangland violence we see, where it's also true. The crazy thing, you look at FBI crime statistics, if you're a Black man in America, you're 7 times more likely to have just committed a violent crime. So there's an under policing in the neighborhoods, and defund the police was the exact opposite of what we needed. We need more rule of law where there's stray bullets going in inner cities and harming the innocent. And yeah, to find these crazy things and BLM and billions of dollars in damages, and 25 people died in those riots in 2020. Yeah, that's right. It's just picking at the scabs, and just laying those facts out there like I just did is one of the things Charlie did, and that people would get so upset at him about. And it's like, yeah, people don't want to walk on eggshells, or people walk on eggshells. They don't want to offend anybody, but Charlie was courageous in that way, and he was speaking truths that are so important. So here, I want to go back to Danya. Or go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah. Part of that, though, I think is to a culture, because you have a culture that, you know, glorifies certain aspects that aren't probably the best for said culture. And usually the guy in the nice car riding through the ghetto isn't the necessarily the guy who went to college and got a degree, or a lawyer, or a guy who started his own successful business. It's usually the guy who's slinging drugs. And those are the cars that the kids want to drive, and those are the guys that those kids, look at and emulate, because that's what they see as their avenue towards success. Which, like, to me, that goes back to the broader scheme too of we talked about today, the low bigotry of expectations. You have a party that's like, we can't have voter ID because for some reason, I guess, African Americans are incapable of getting voting cards. When it's like the simplest task any of us can do, but God forbid we require it of them, because we would be racist. Because we should expect them to not be able to do something the rest of the public can do. So to me, it's like, I always love that phrase. That's that soft bigotry, because that's what it is. It's low expectations.
Yeah, that's really well said. Danya, what do you got for us?
What comes to mind for me, yeah, Erica, it was really powerful listening to Erica. But it makes me think about how this discussion of our culture, I think the assumption is that our culture is organic, that food is safe, that our culture is organic. And I don't think it is. I don't think our culture, I think, is largely top-down influenced through Hollywood, through all the moneyed interest and influencers. I think we didn't have a victory day, like I guess certain countries do, to celebrate winning in World War II, defeating the Nazis. The mind control programs were moved to here. And I think it's just been a continuum. We're under serious, very, very advanced mind control. And this isn't organic, what we see. BLM is not organic. Antifa is not organic. These assassinations are not organic. I don't think it's just, I think we see a lot of people who are under the spell of these mind control, population level mind control operations. But the really carrying out these heinous acts, the operations are conducted by, I think, at a very high level. They're very sophisticated. It's very sophisticated weapons are being used against us. And I think they're false flag attacks left and right, and that it's meant to distract us, for terror, for confusion, to pit us against each other. So I think we need to, try to see through it.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind is, yeah, it is like somebody was speaking about earlier, it's this vilification and this enmity and using words like Nazi and fascist and just painting the other side in the worst terms. And I think that does come from a, top-down agenda that seeks to distract us and divide us, whether that's just corporate interests that are doing that just so that they can, maximize profits, keep us from organizing, or whether that's something other than that. It's I think that we see that plainly, that this is what we're seeing. So Alex, I wanted to bring you back in. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems to me the divisiveness really blew up starting in around 2009 after the 2008 economic recession, the Great Recession, when the banks got bailed out. My wife and I were active in the Tea Party at the time. And if you remember, you had the Tea Party was right-wingers protesting the bank bailouts and the notion that it was socialism for the rich, capitalism for the rest of us. And then a little bit after that, you had Occupy Wall Street, where the left was protesting, but their talking point was basically the same. And right after that, you start to have, you can verify this if you look at Google Trends. It is at that moment that the entirety of woke ideology becomes to be prominent in Google Trends, and it goes on a skyrocket. And you get people being torn apart by race and sex and gender identity and sexual preference and immigration status, et cetera, et cetera. There was a purposeful strategy was implemented to divide Americans from Americans, so that we would not keep our eye on the ball on the real systemic reforms that were necessary to make the country's economy successful again for everyday Americans the way it had been previously. And we are today living in the aftermath, right? Like, we didn't know it at the time, but in 2008, 2009, we lost a really important battle for the heart of the country. And we are in the aftermath of that defeat, trying to understand what went wrong and how do we fix things. And now, of course, things are much, much worse. Imagine if we had gotten the budget under control in 2008. Now we have $33 trillion in debt, right? How do you fix that? The problems are so much worse. We had a lot more unity in 2008. Now we're literally at each other's throats. So much worse.
Yeah, it has been trending in the wrong direction. Tam, I want to bring you back in here. You want to share there about Erica's remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I was holding back tears as I was watching that, and I just thought, like, how brave of her that she was even able to talk that long. I know she was crying during, but she's a strong woman, and I think she was able to get up there and talk because she had the Lord with her, and she knew, Charlie was there in spirit, and I love that she didn't cower away. She made sure we understood that his movement is going to go on. His legacy is going to be bigger than when he was alive, and that they're not stopping, especially her mentioning like, hey, we're coming here in December, we're doing these dates, like we're not backing away. And it's ironic, yesterday I got a text from a family member. I guess he's been seeing my post, and I think it came across, it was meant to be, to mean well, and that's what but me and this family member, we have opposing views. But basically he said, when people get on social media or they say hateful things and crazy ideas and rhetoric, this is what happens, and it's not worth it. And I said, are you referring to Charlie Kirk? I said, because I don't think anyone deserves to die, and that's no excuse, to assassinate someone. He said, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, like, you just be careful what you say. And I'm thinking this was a way to shut me down, because our views aren't alike. But and I told him, I said, I will never. My daughter's here with me. She's kind of loud, but my daughter has autism. She's vaccine injured, and I told him, I said, I'm never going to stop voicing my opinion on vaccine injuries and safety. I said, I was like, I have two daughters and they're my world, and I'm always going to stand up to that. Like, I'm not going to cower away and be quiet. And he was just, and my family member was like, basically, well, you saw what happened, and it's just not worth it. And it's like, no, we're not cowering away. We're not going to stop speaking. That's what the enemy wants you to do. That's what the devil wants you to do. And we're not going to do that. And so just hearing Erica's message tonight, it's very powerful. It was very inspirational. The part when her daughter asking where her dad was, that was really hard. Yeah. So.
Oh, dad's on a business trip with Jesus, getting the blueberry budget. That was
Yeah.
that was a good
Yeah.
line. Oh my
She's
gosh,
amazing.
can you imagine?
Mhm. No, I can't, because I remember when my husband was deployed, my girls would be crying every night the first week once they got old enough to understand. So I can't even imagine how do you explain to these babies, that their dad's not coming back. And it was hard to watch. As powerful it was, and I'm probably going to go back and watch it again. And but it's such a tragic.
Yeah, for her to, yes, like you said, stand there and speak with everything she's going through, and yeah, very eloquent and very courageous and a lot of poise. That was great to see.
Very poised woman.
Yeah, Alex, you talked about there the divide and the division and how this is just getting wilder and wilder. And yeah, you mentioned man, these woke dynamics. It is like this identity politics, which it splits people into these people groups, right? And then I've heard it described as you kind of getting into it's like an oppression Olympics, right? It's like, well, I'm a victim of this. Oh, now we got cross sectional, right? Okay, well, I'm a black woman. Well, I'm a black trans woman. Well, I'm and it's just, you keep doing that, you get down to the individual, and that's the right level, is to treat people like individuals, made in God's image, full honor, full respect, and nobody gets out alive. If we live long enough, we're all going to lose everyone we love, and and then we're going to die. So, to do this thing that's about, victimhood, well, that's not positive for anybody. That's not good for anybody to want to identify as a victim. And then to do this based on things that happened 7 generations ago, it's just wild. And then the gaslighting now we see I just cannot get over the transgender agenda. We are a country that's swimming in poison. We got all these endocrine disruptors. We're in a fertility crisis. Men, we don't have the testosterone we should. Women don't have the estrogen they would. And now you want to tell kids they can choose their gender? I mean, that just is outright child abuse. That is outright child abuse. And I'm upset at Apple. You go to the Apple store and they got he, him, she, her. They're encouraging these people. It's not like 1 or 2 of the people who really wanted to have this has it. They all got it. I'm sure people can opt out, but just about all have it. So why do the rest of us have to go now out in public into a store, and now we have to explain to our children what that means? Okay, well, until about 10 years ago, this was a mental disorder, and now everybody's pretending like, yeah, you can just identify as something. You don't tell a child, yeah, you can be a turtle, yeah, you can be a cat, yeah, you can be Wonder Woman. We you got two X chromosomes in every cell, or an X and a Y, if you're born with that, and there's no change in that, and that's never going to happen, no matter how crazy this whole transgender gets, or if it does get that far. You know what? That's it's not a direction we want to go anyhow. And I think it really does. It gets at the core of who we are as a people. Most of us, a people of faith. The first page of the scriptures. Male and female, God created them. It is like a litmus test for denying reality. And yeah, it's just not the right direction we want to be heading. And our children are getting the worst of it. So jump in there. Was that you, Danya?
Oh, I just wanted to, I think it's Alex was talking about being in the work, in the Tea Party movement, and that then their Occupy started up, and they had a similar, sentiments, but on, very different political spectrum. And and then we're talking about the divide, the divisiveness, and how it's gotten worse and worse. And I think, I was, talking about how inorganic I think that is, how I think it's part of a top-down operation being conducted on us. But I think that they were really, the focus they've really been devoting their, emphasis to divide us, because I think we were moving in such a similar direction. They didn't want us to notice what we had in common, these movements, and that we really are coming to the same conclusions, common sense conclusions. And I was in the Occupy movement, and I think it's funny that Alex is in the Tea Party, with the Tea Party, and I remember, we thought, the Tea Party was just so crazy, and they probably thought we were pretty far out, and now we're very aligned. So I think still we are coming together. I can see, so much, like during Kennedy's, coming from the left, and all the maha that he brought with him to join MAGA and the forces united. There is a lot of coming together still, and that's, thanks to people like Charlie, powerful forces in facilitating those conversations that help us realize how much we really do have in common, and getting back to common sense and dialogue and critical thinking. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead
want
there.
to, I was going to say, I want to piggyback on what you said and about coming together and not letting us be divided. We just think about the common sense, and it brings me back to Bobby's speech, and it's been played in the last couple of days. It's the one when he was in Philadelphia and he declared his independence, and he talked about, as long as we're fighting, the king and queen are toasting champagne and popping and celebrating, because we're too busy to notice what they're doing, all the things that they're doing behind the wall, taking away and chipping away our rights one at a time. But we need to always forget, like, we can't let that happen, because the goal is for us to go over the wall. Like, that speech it kind of resonates with me. Um, and again, coming back to Bobby and all the common sense that he talked about. Avery, but yeah, I watched that today, and I was like, gosh, now I remember why, like, I campaigned for him and support him, because it's the truth.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how many Republicans that when they were running were lambasted as, Hitler and Satan incarnate, like, Bush, et cetera. But now they've been completely uh, uh, brought into the fold of this sort of establishment octopus, and to the point where, Bill Clinton and George Bush are effectively indistinguishable, um, uh, in their relationship to the establishment. Whereas, someone like Bobby Kennedy comes from the most respectable Democratic family you can imagine, career in politics and public service, but is now completely persona non grata because he's moved away from this sort of elite consensus, and that's what's really developed. It's an elite consensus. I went to an elite law school, and I sort of saw how that education process happens and how you create, that kind of a mindset among, your Ivy League lawyers and such that go on and run the country. And it creates a certain worldview, and it differentiates them from, the average American and the average American's needs, which become largely irrelevant. And for I think most of our elections, most of our lives have been more or less, ignore the man behind the curtain, and pick two, but it's the same outcome either way. And now we find ourselves saying, no, we actually need another outcome because this is not working anymore. This $33 trillion in debt and tearing ourselves apart, and it's not working anymore. So, Johnny, I need to head out. So thank you very much.
Well,
for having
thanks
me
so
on.
much for stopping by, Alex. Yeah, great to meet you.
Really
Thanks
appreciate
for the
you having me on.
conversation, Alex. It's good to see
Thanks,
you again.
Alex. Yeah,
Great
great
to see you.
contribution. Thank you.
Don, great to reach across the aisle to an Occupy Wall Streeter. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so we have so much in common now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
All right.
I'm full on Q these days.
There you go. All right, Bill, good to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. All right. Well, what more can we say? Any closing thoughts before we adjourn ourselves? I'll just say it makes me want to go to college campuses and go
Yeah.
speak truth to anybody who's willing to engage about it.
I'm gonna
I
go
got
straight to Turning Point USA. That's where I'm going next.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to check it out.
I wanted to mention earlier, what a prophetic name, Turning Point USA, because it could be a turning point for the United States. I have a
Yep.
relative who, grew up, I would say conservative, Catholic, went to college, came back, liberal atheist, and he put some posts up today that were definitely conservative points. So it's like, I know one person already that's had a direct effect on what's happened to Charlie. So let me get into one thing I want to mention. You guys can touch on later. The governor of Utah who spoke today, great speech. What he said, I thought was so on point. And probably out of everybody I heard today at that presser, Governor of Utah, for me, that guy, he stood out. So if you haven't, if
Yes.
you didn't catch what he said, go back and catch it, man. He was fire, bro.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I wanted to say I heard him today and it really resonated with me. And I was like, wow, he is amazing. Like,
yeah, I was in the shop
very
working.
inspirational.
I had it on and just got to listening to him, and I put down the sander, and it was like, I even told a few people like, hey, I have never heard of this guy. I immediately looked him up to see his party affiliation and everything. But yeah,
Governor Cox.
whatever side of the aisle he would have fell on, I would have commended him for the speech he gave, because I think it was well written. I think it was what was needed at the time. I don't think anybody could have done any better.
No, it was amazing.
Yeah, I don't think any of the stuff's organic. When you see, pallets of bricks being delivered and stuff like that, it's hard to argue that there's anything organic about that. I think there's the two obvious reasons for me is one, divide and conquer. And the other is, I think outside influences who would want to see this country fall realized, especially with an armed population, realize that we're not going to throw this country in a turmoil. We're not going to win this war with bullets. We're going to have to win it, divide and conquer, and votes. And I think you see what goes on in academia. I think the same thing. It's you look at who's getting voted into office now. It's people like this guy running in New York. Who would have thought this guy would even have a chance, even in New York? So to me, it's like that's my fear. If I'm going to be frank with everybody, is people like this really getting into power? And in a democracy, that's something that could happen. And we need to take guys like this seriously. And there was a comment made earlier. He was talking about 2008, and we look at where we're at now with political correctness. And there was something Rush Limbaugh said a long time ago before he passed, where he said, there was a time our mistake was when this ideology reared its head, we laughed at it and mocked it, and we put it to the side. And that's what we did for so many years. We didn't take it seriously. We thought it was a joke. And we thought it was so fringe that it would never make its way into our households and into the mainstream. And it has done that. It has metastasized. Those are another thing, false flags. Yeah. I always read every day how there's so many bots and things like this out of China that are in social media that are there just to get us to hate each other. And I wish more people thought about that kind of stuff, because Patty Pimbleton you may be arguing with on Facebook, maybe some guy, in China. So it's, who's manipulating you to want to go punch your neighbor. So I think we need to calm down on all that stuff. And then somebody said something about coming together earlier. I would love to see that, but I also want to say I'm an optimistic person. Okay. I wake up glasses half full, but I will say you have somebody with an agenda that says make America healthy again, and we can't even get everybody to agree on that. Okay. That should be like, who is against that? Okay. So that for me is also a little discerning. Okay. That should be an easy, yeah, let's get our kids healthy and that kind of thing. And then the transgender thing, I don't even want to get started on that. That's another 20 minutes. I bought my son an easy bake oven when he was like 8, 6. He made cookies, he made brownies. They were terrible and they took forever. But that said, I didn't put a dress on him. I didn't think I just thought, hey, he's a kid. He likes to cook. I'm going to get it. When I grew up, there were tomboys and things like that. And it's almost turned into now it's, the kid doesn't have a chance to be a tomboy and then later, grow up and become whatever woman she decides to be. She's a tomboy. She's an overall. She's obviously got gender dysphoria or some kind of gender issue. So there's a lot I could get into on that, man. I don't know I don't want to keep y'all that long. So.
Well said, Bill. Yeah, it's over $1 million if a child goes that route, lifetime, what they're signing up for, and they gaslight us again. They tell us, hey, there's a high suicide rate if you don't encourage this. The truth is, there's a high suicide rate once you really start going down that path.
Yes. Yeah. I will say I always found it funny, and my main point to people is, a lot of people I find who would call themselves liberals or left leaning also call themselves feminists and things like that. And, those two that are all in on the transgender culture. And I would consider myself a feminist, but I think it's more of a traditional feminist, because I think traditionally it was more about equality. And I don't know what it's kind of turned into now, almost like a man hating, like girl power thing. And I'm all for girl power. Don't misunderstand me. God, where was I going with that? I just threw myself off.
Charlie's all about the family, so it kind of goes, about that. I think it's wild that our society now somehow.
Oh,
Can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
Oh, now I can.
All right, go ahead, Bill. You're ready.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm going to chime in on the feminism when you get a time, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I got my point back. My point being on that is, it's hard for me to see a feminist argue that point and consider yourself a true feminist. And this is just my opinion. Okay. Because to me, you take someone like Bruce Jenner and you take any man. Okay. First thing is, he doesn't know what it really is like to be a woman, because he hasn't grown up as a woman. He hasn't had to suffer those slings and arrows of whatever insecurities young girls feel about their bodies, about having a period in the middle of class or school, things that are formative to young girls. A man has no idea what that is like. So his view of a woman is his perception of a woman. It's his reality of what a woman is, but that is his reality. It's confined to him. It doesn't define what a woman actually is. Okay, so as a society, it's almost like they've want us to say, hey, we're going to take this man and he's going to make superficial changes. He's going to put on a dress. He may get fake breasts. He may stuff a bra. But now he does this and he is a sheep and I should treat him as such. And to me, it's like, how degrading is that to women to say, like this guy can make a couple superficial changes and suddenly he is a woman. He knows what it's like. He can relate, and I have to address him and treat him as one. That's what's crazy to me about it is, it's not about accepting. There was a time when certain cultures and certain alt lifestyles said we just want to be accepted, and we reached that point, but now it's almost like we don't want to just be accepted, we want you to celebrate us. It's not enough to say it's okay that two men get married. We want you out in the street with a sign parading for us, or you're a part of the problem, kind of thing. I'll let you guys have it back.
Those were great points. That's so funny. I just wanted to comment that I was, in academia for like 16 years, and I was big feminist and couldn't understand why anybody wasn't a feminist. And it's not that I don't know if I would say I am or am not, a feminist these days. I kind of think it's kind of a irrelevant point for me these days, because these powers that be get a hold of any of these movements and they co-opt them, and they for one example is they started pushing the message that early in the feminist movement that men smoke, so if you're a real feminist, you're going to smoke like the guys, and they started marketing cigarettes that way, and it gets co-opted. And I don't think it's very anti-family. It's turned into, and back to it not being organic. I think it's an operation, psychological operation, an attack on our population. And yeah, I stand for all the things that most people would associate with being a feminist, but the movement has been hijacked, I would say. With anything that has power they try to hijack it.
It did seem like, yeah, man, Charlie, he just was a foremost, one of the most prominent, just getting the word out. His movement, he started Turning Point, and it is picking up so much steam, so popular. People excited to see him. I think that the height of the humanity is it's language, it's communication, it's the fact that we can share ideas, that we can come to understandings. And yeah, Charlie was there where that's the hardest, doing some of the hardest communication, and saying these truths that likely got him taken from us. And yeah, he was kind of talking about how he could see something like this coming in the last couple months. There's a couple of sayings about that. So just yeah, it brings me back to the idea, though, that the hill you're dying on is worth dying on, and we're being taken out in all these different ways, and standing up about this is it's just so important, so needed, so critical. And yeah, you talked about Make America Healthy Again, Bill. He was a big supporter of that. He was really, really excited about the movement.
How could you not be? Who's
right?
against good health, man?
I go back to this kind of foundational thing. What's more important than the health of us and our loved ones?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's an answer for that. And if there is, maybe, well, you could say maybe salvation. Okay?
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Okay.
But as a dad, I'll tell you this: I don't even worry about my health so much as I do my loved ones. I'm man, me, and I grew up and where I'm out, and And I'm not the kind of guy that goes all the time to the doctor and worries about his health, which isn't always the greatest thing. But I don't let my kids live like that, and I don't let my wife live like that. I want to make sure. But to me, I look at myself more as like a secondary. It's not as important to me. But that's probably just how I was raised, because that's how all the men in my life always were. Family came first. Can be a terrible curse.
You're part of the family. The family is
I
no
am.
longer with you, so they need you to stick around
Mhm.
and take care of.
Just rub some dirt on it, walk it off, right, Bill?
Yeah. Hey, man, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. What do you got, Tim? You excited about Maha and everything going on?
I am. I was saying on the last podcast when I said I've really stepped away for a while after the confirmation just to take time out for myself and my family, and just because we were busy for like 18 months. But when all the attacks on Bobby and everything coming up with the hearing, that's when I really got back into it. And then it led up to the Charlotte shooting, since we're here in North Carolina, and then now this. And I feel like I am really just all back in and speaking up every day again. And I wasn't speaking up. I was just like, you know what? We were so busy, and Danya, we had Zooms every day, when it came to getting the campaigning for Bobby, and it was just kind of everyone took time out for themselves. It's like, okay, Bobby's in his place, he's doing it, we're going to be supporting. Now we can kind of stopped a little bit. So speaking about health, I just want to say we're at the point where we do have to worry so much about health because we've been poisoned for so long. And from my personal experience, having a daughter that's been vaccine injured, health is so important to even what she eats. It affects her, what gives her more neurological tics. Like, this is what we deal with. The type of food she eats, the ingredients there, what's causing this. And this is my life. Like, this is, every day that I deal with, like, trying to figure out what supplement did I give her? What food did I feed her that we're seeing an uptake on these ticks, or she's not sleeping? And it all comes from, she can't detoxify all these toxins in her body, and it's causing inflammation. It's yeah, I don't know who why they're fighting to be healthy. I see people laugh every time HHS post comes on or something about Bobby, and I try not to engage with these people. Obviously they're brainwashed, but sometimes I can't help it. I'm like, are you seriously arguing against like something good happening? Like that's just kind of like how they're fighting against crime. You know what I mean? Like, no, do not stop the crime. We want it to happen. But it's just, I don't know. It's ridiculous. We need to bring common sense back. That's what it is. Because, and I think majority of the people that do not have it until they hear mainstream media. This is how, like you said, Danya, their master manipulation, the brainwashing program that they've had. I mean, this has been going on for years. And I always make this joke, like, until the mainstream media says it, no one will believe it. You know what I mean? Because only when mainstream media tells them this is what you're believing today, then they will believe it. But otherwise, they just, yeah, it's sad. And most of it's just basic logic. But I think that's gone, common sense and logic has gone out the door.
Tim, how does the quote go? You remind me of it. First they make fun of you, then they fight you, and then you win them over to your side, something like that. So, hey,
I'm trying.
I found this clip here of the governor. It's just a minute long here. I want to play this. This does look
We
good.
get to make decisions. We have our agency. And I desperately call on every American Republican, Democrat, liberal, progressive, conservative, MAGA, all of us to please, please, please follow what Charlie taught me. I'll just conclude with with words I share often from a friend and author, Yuval Levin, who was asked if he was optimistic about our country. And he said, I'm not optimistic. He said, I hate optimism. Like, that sounds bad. But he said, optimism is a vice. It's this idea that good things are just going to happen. And he said, in the history of the world, good things have never just happened. He says, I'm not optimistic, but I am hopeful. And hope is the virtue that sits between the vices of optimism and pessimism. Hope is the idea that good things are going to happen because we can make them so. I still believe in our country. And I know Charlie Kirk believed in our country. I still believe that there is more good among us than evil. And I still believe that we can change the course of history. I'm hopeful because Americans can make it so.
Hope is the virtue between the vices of pessimism and optimism. I never heard that before. That's great.
Yeah, I thought he was good today.
Here, Tim, you're muted, Tim.
I was saying that if you get a chance, go back and listen to the whole press conference, starting with when they caught the guy, because I watched it and I'm like, who is Governor Cox and how come we've never heard him? But like everything he is saying just made so much sense. He started with some quotes of Charlie, and then he talked about putting, get off social media, get off social media and let's have conversations and, calling for unity and, I don't know. It resonated with me, and it's a good message. I'm probably gonna try to share it on my page.
Yeah, he started that too, and if I recall, because this was this morning, he said, we're at a point where we could go two directions here. It can either get uglier or it can start to get better. And I thought that was a great point, and I hope that resonates with people because it wouldn't be hard for us to turn this ship around, I don't think. You're always going to have those people on the outskirts that are never going to want to come to the middle and try and work together. But maybe this will be one of those turning points. I wasn't alive when MLK died. And someone made a reference to him earlier, and I thought it was a good reference. I hope nobody was offended by that because I thought freedom of speech is one of the greatest civil rights that we have. And Charlie represented that to me. So I do think, you can put him up there as a civil rights activist, which is what I've kind of heard thrown around now, like let's remember him in this way, because maybe it would be more powerful. But I see it as that anyway, just because I see, he exemplified that. Most of us are of a generation where we think about MLK and how he was the embodiment of the civil rights movement as far as racial equality. But as far as freedom of speech, man, Charlie Kirk's got to be one of the guys up there at the top, especially for my generation, my kids' generation. I don't know anybody who really hung a candle. And like I said, he also did it in a way that I think the parties had trouble reaching out to that age. And I think that's also one of the things that made him frightening was, there's been such a lock on young minds, and you have a guy like Charlie come in and, you got kids watching him all over TikTok and Instagram, and they're excited. And that's what I mean. Debates are exciting. I think they're exciting anyway, to see the ideas come and clash and whoever has the best ones kind of win. I don't know, I'm a big fight fan too, and I kind of equate the two. But I think he had a reach, man, that I think also was kind of scary to that side, because it's like, give him 10, 20 years. Where would he have been? Where would he have been within the party? Where would he have been within the country? Where would he have been within the political sphere? And how many young people would he have carried over there with him? You know what I mean? Kids like my son who got, more influence, who got influenced by Charlie Kirk before he was, sent to college somewhere and influenced by somebody else. So I applauded what he did, and I hope someone out there is able to pick up that mantle and fill that space that he held. I heard Ben Shapiro today, and he talked about, there was some talk. It was a big video because he cussed, and Ben Shapiro doesn't cuss. It was like the '90s, when Ninja Turtles came out, and Raphael said "damn," and all the kids my age were like, "Oh my God!" It was like Ben Shapiro's moment today. Um, and he came out and said, I'm not going to cancel any of my college things where, that's the rumor, and I'm going to go to them all. And I think that's something we will see, at least in the short term, is maybe some of these influencers will try and pick up that void and go out to colleges and carry the mantle that he held. But I hope somebody really steps up and can do it. There'll be no filling for him, and there'll always be somebody who will temporarily kind of carry it. But I hope that there is a genuine artifact out there now, a young man in high school or a young lady who will find their voice and be able to connect with the young people in a way that he did in the current generation of politics.
I heard that he alone was it an up of 44% of Gen Z voters, males, that went over and voted for Trump just from what Charlie did. That's
Mhm.
huge. Yeah. And I mean, he did. He had a really
No, you're good.
he had a really wide reach, and he was very effective, and that is why they took him out. I saw some of the news outlet refer to him as the lieutenant, like
Yeah.
that and because I will tell you, I was shocked that I don't think I would have thought Charlie would have been a target. I think we had this discussion in our smaller groups. Okay, Trump being targeted, Bobby. I never imagined Charlie, and so I think that's why it was so shocking to all of us. Like, why would they take him
Hey,
out? But now, if now if you look at it, and for the people, I saw so many people say, "Who is this Charlie Kirk?" And then I looked him up, and he's this and that. Oh, yeah, we didn't even know who he was. Well, if you didn't know who Charlie Kirk was before, um, 2 days ago, you're definitely going to hear about him, and his legacy is going to live on, just like MLK, JFK,
yeah. Yeah.
RFK,
Well,
because
the other thing,
he's.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
You,
you're fine.
I want to buttress your point on that because, everything is readily available on the internet, even the things we don't want our children to see. And I saw, the shooting of Charlie from every imaginable angle. And I know my child probably did too, because he's more internet savvy than I am. And I think that in itself, man, we're not wired for those type of things, to see those and process them well. I think in general, and I think, that it's gonna be. I think he's it kind of touches both. Kennedy was the same in the fact of it was very public, and this was more so, I think, than Kennedy, because everybody has a cell phone now. You know what I mean? Everybody's got a TV in their pocket, and everything is recorded. What happened to Kennedy, but it isn't like people could just rewind it at home and watch it again. Where what we saw to Charlie, we could rewind, we could slow mo, we could zoom in. So I think that is going to be powerful in some of these kids going forward in their minds. And then the MLK reference again would be, the civil rights thing. So I see similarities in them both, and I hope, the left is going to try and write the history they want on him. But I hope it's the history books look back on the civil discussion that he tried to create between us, because that's really what his legacy should be about. And back to the other thing, like I said, how long had it been since people talked about Jesus on campus? And Charlie he didn't just go there and debate politically. He also went there and was willing to talk. I mean, God and everything else, but you want to watch one of his best debates, watch him debate LeBron versus Jordan and who's the greatest. I mean, that's probably one of the best debates I've seen him do. So really impressive guy in the fact he was well-rounded, man. The guy knew a lot about a lot, and he was willing to step up and talk to anybody about it, man, and do it with a smile, even at times when it seemed like he was getting spit in the face. So like I said, I'll miss him, And I think his impact, I think where we are today and the reach that event, the people that event touched and the way it touched them, I think it'll have more, I think it'll create a big impact. Like I said, Mike had went to church that night, and he's like, we are not regular churchgoers. We're a godly family, but we don't go to church as much as we probably should. So for him and a bunch of his soccer friends to go that night, that spoke a lot to me. You know what I mean? He definitely was feeling something, and he'll carry that, I think, into his adulthood. So
Yeah, Bill, I think you're right. I think it's like we all have a little bit of PTSD for a lot of us who saw that video. That I think that's the most graphic thing that a lot of us have seen. Like, I think of movies. Most movies that are, known as violent aren't that graphic. And yeah, but I like what you were saying there about, just the class, the decorum, how he represented free speech, how the debates, it's lively. It's engaging, and it's important, and it's man, it's
we should have put them in coliseums, there. Like, we don't, we don't, get me wrong, I love violence, but we take, we put on a pedestal the sports and the things of violent nature, and that's the high. And I guess that maybe that's just our animal instincts, our primitive minds. But it's the violence and aggressive stuff that gets to watch, the football, the boxing, the MMA. But to me, it's like, I think debate's just as exciting, man. To watch two guys go in there and ideas, and and somebody, come out and throw a good punch, and it's great to watch. And I wish as a society we would get back to that, where it's like, there's no fun in shooting somebody and silencing them. Let's square up and let's debate and let the best idea win. And when you win, take a little pride in that. I don't care, but I don't know, man. It's changed a lot.
Well, I like what you're saying, Tam, about a lot of people haven't even heard of him, and then the left rewriting history. So I actually just want to play this short little clip of him debating, and I just want everybody watching to see the class and the respect he showed for this person, and know that in other situations where the crowd maybe wasn't being kind or respectful of somebody who's speaking with another viewpoint, he would always tell the crowd, let's show honor here, let's respect him.
Say I'm a transgender male. What age should kids be able to get things like hormone therapy? Because I don't know what's true, what's not.
Tell me, are you comfortable telling me your story?
I've known that since like third grade, and I'm currently 19, almost 20. I've known basically since then. I didn't start going by like a different name until 7th and 8th grade. I just don't know, like, with the whole medical stuff, like what's true, what's not, what's helpful, because I've heard so many different opinions.
First of all, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to have an opinion that very few people will ever tell you, which is I want you to be very cautious putting drugs into your system in the pursuit of changing your body. Mm-hmm. I instead encourage you to work on what's going on in your brain first. I think what you need first and foremost is just a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Just someone that is going to listen to what you've gone through, listen to what else is going on. My prayer for you, and again, very few people will say this, I actually want to see you be comfortable in how you were born.
Yeah.
I know that you might not feel that way, but I think that is something that you can achieve. I think that with the right team and the right people, you don't have to wage war on your body. You can learn to love your body.
Powerful what he said, that last sentence. You don't have to wage war on your body, what's natural, but learn to love it. And as teenagers, you're confused, even young adults, and you can, you're still very impressionable. You can swing to one side very easily just by someone telling you something, or what you see on TV, or who you idolize, these movie stars, these Hollywood movie stars. Again, like when you see Hollywood stars that have 5 kids that are all transgender, so all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's normal. So okay, maybe I feel this way. I need to go for it, and I'm gonna feel this way. And yeah, it's that's how easily it became accessible. And because again, we got the influence, and then they see it everywhere, and then you actually had parents that were like, you know what, my child is this age, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. It just, it boggled my mind where I saw people doing surgeries for 3, 4 year olds. I don't even know how that was legal, but that is just strange. Like, how do you know?
Yeah,
Your brain is still developing, and changing, all those years.
I'll say what's enticing about victimhood, I think, is the shield it comes with. And I think that's especially for younger kids, because they see a kid and maybe that kid's getting picked on or whatever, but there's special treatment there, and that whatever that, that victimization is becomes a shield for them. People can't pick on me because I'm this. And I'll just take transgenderism for that. It's the hip thing to be right now. I remember I had, when my older kid was in school, he came home one time and he said, it's cool. The cool thing right now is to be gay. Like, it's cool to be gay. It's like the hip thing, and a lot of guys are kind of acting that way and saying it, but it's kind of because what the chicks, it's kind of the thing to be right now. And I think, like I said, with the trans thing too, it becomes a shield where I'm a victim and I can't be picked on. So if you have kids that see this, that see kids get special treatment because they put a certain label on themselves, maybe they're celebrated more than the other kids, or they have, or even a month to celebrate their sexuality. I think it's easy to kind of pick that up. As far as like that mentality, as it looking appealing to kids.
Oh, kids are crazy. They go through so many phases. I remember all the crazy things I used to think, or some of them. And
They do.
I'm in my 40s. I still go through phases, Bill.
Well, right. I mean, I'm like thinking, I remember being 19 and telling my mom, like, Mom, I'm 19. I know everything. You don't get to tell me anything. And it's like, as a 40-something-year-old woman and looking back, and it's like, wow, I did not know anything at 19, and you're so different in your 40s and your 30s, 20, but to think that you have to go through these life altering changes at certain age, and that people like these medical professionals actually advocated for it. It's so ridiculous. So that's probably a topic for another day. I gotta jump off. It's getting late. But
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. I wish we had time to talk about what happened in Charlotte. That has been on my mind the last couple of days. That, I mean, it really got me fired up. Maybe another day, but
Yeah.
that
Thank you
I
for
think
coming today.
that
Yeah.
a lot of that is people are so desensitized. Is that the word? Where we don't care anymore. We're so self-absorbed in what we're doing. We don't care what's happening. I mean, since when is one female getting stabbed to death or even beaten, and you got three males not doing anything? Whoa, like, if you looked
Also, the
over, oh
culture
gosh, yeah, okay, I'm
of
just gonna get back
of
on my phone.
everybody
Like,
jumping on their cell phone and
it,
recording.
it,
They're either
it's so
doing
nuts.
nothing
Yeah.
or
And I'm,
they're recording.
like, and I'm so glad that we're finally in the age where, in our district this year, no cell phones are allowed. You have to turn it off. You can't bring it to school. But a
Yeah.
couple years back, I had teacher friends that told me like it's so distracting. They're all on their phones and we can't make them get off. Even last year when they tried to do it, you had parents coming up there fighting the schools, saying like, "How am I going to get a hold of my kid?" And they're saying like, yeah, well, we got phone numbers here at the school, just like
Yeah.
how in the old days we did. If you wanted to get a hold of us or we needed to call our parents, you go to the office. But I love it that we're moving towards that. And I know Bobby's been a big advocate in that, going around the different states, talking to the governors and checking out the model schools where there's a no cell phone policy, and how well they're doing. People are engaging. Even at my daughter's, she goes to an all autism school here in Fayetteville. And this year they changed it where, well, they already didn't allow personal electronics, like in the classrooms, because especially the kids on the spectrum, they love their devices. But this year, the principal put a rule where during lunch, they're not allowed to pull it out. Even their therapist that's with them. So my daughter has a therapist with her all day. They're not allowed to pull that cell phone out because they want the kids to try interact instead of
Oh,
all, being there for, and it's especially hard again for the kids on the spectrum because that's what they want to do. But she enforces, she's like, I want them to try to talk to one another. I know communication's hard. I want them to try to interact. No cell phones during lunch. And I thought, this is awesome,
yeah,
and we didn't see any parents say no, like, no, my son loves his device. And so it was awesome to see that. So I do think that we are moving towards that because we've seen how much these electronics have really done some damage to our brains, especially the kids. I mean, even adults, we're on our phones all day long.
yeah, that's a
And
whole nother discussion.
right, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
discussion, but it's harming because their brains are still developing, but when but the Charlotte thing that happened, that's what it reminded me of is people looked over and like, oh, what happened? But okay, let me just get back on my phone. Let me do this. Let me maybe take a picture and post, and that's it. And it's like, what?
Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. The conspiratory mind in me thinks, hey, because this just leading up to this, that story was catching so much.
It was.
Like that was the news cycle. Like
Mhm.
and even though it happened
Oh,
weeks
yeah.
ago, people were just learning about it, and
Yep.
it was very much against, what the narrative of, the mainstream would want. Right? It was a
Who the
Ukrainian girl.
perpetrator was.
Oh,
Mhm.
right. It was the
But then look,
Ukrainian girl, but also it was a Ukrainian girl, right?
Is a
yeah,
Ukrainian girl. But you didn't
And
see any of the Ukrainian supporters say anything about
yeah.
it.
Where's your flags now?
right,
On your
and then
social media profile,
and it
And
was
I
it was it was such in cold blood. And there's just the one thing about it was, you know what? Well, first of all, did you know her name meant peace? So let's pray for
I did
peace in our
not.
country. Yeah, her
Yeah,
name means
beautiful,
peace.
beautiful young girl, 23
Mm.
years old. I mean,
Yeah,
gosh,
what's in a
23
pizza
years
joint?
old.
I'm like, awesome. Man,
Just
could have
to, yeah,
average sounds like an average American girl, man, It could have been.
Well, here's one thing though. You have something like George Floyd, or you have these cases that they just want to like focus on for 6 months at a time, and they want to attribute malice and racism and all these things that aren't there, but they're just coming up with it. They're just putting that on these people. They don't have any reason to. That perpetrator, after he did that, he said, "I got that white girl."
yeah.
Yeah.
He said it. It was a con tape. There was a photo going around the internet that basically, I think they used AI. Like if it was reverse,
Yes, I saw that
and
today.
the victim was African American, and everyone else was Caucasian on there, then Charlotte would have been burning down. And again, that is an uncomfortable truth to say. And if you say that, people will get really angry, like, how dare you say that? You're racist. No, I'm not. I'm comparing. That's what happened with George Floyd. I remember,
Yeah.
we were there for that. And I was duped into that for a minute, and then maybe a couple days, and then I was like, wait a minute, like, this is not right. Like, no, like, I'm not for defunding the police, and I'm not for this, and but I I didn't share that. I figured it would cause a lot of controversy, but it is so true when you look at it. It would have made headline news if it happened, but
That's exactly right.
yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's talk again soon, and let's keep praying
Yeah,
for our country. Thank you,
let's
Tim,
pray
so
for
much
our
for coming
country.
in.
All right, thanks for the conversation, guys.
Yeah,
Ciao.
thanks.
All right, Bill. Any closing thoughts here?
No, that was fun, man.
All right. Well,
A
let's
little,
go.
little nervous first time,
Well, we're
but
still live here. Let's just real
I,
quick here.
I,
One of these
I
days,
could
we got to go tag team one of these campuses here. You know, go me go to FSU. Bring the mics, huh?